So, keeping in view the fact that Pakistan itself is facing enormous economic challenges, economic crisis, security issues. So, do you think, keeping in view of our own issues, Pakistan would continue to be a leading voice for the developing world in the UN?
Pakistan has always contributed to efforts to promote international peace and security in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter. Our relationship with India at the least, and to try to resolve our conflicts as such. On the Afghanistan issue, our diplomacy has been to try and convince the interim government in Kabul that they must take action against terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, especially TTP terrorism.
Unable to prevent Israeli bombardment and genocide, same was the case of ICJ. So how you see this complex situation? All orders, verdicts, documents, resolutions are there, and Israeli bombardment is continuing.
The pressure has been mounting on Israel, and you see the cracks within the Israeli government, and we are hopeful that this pressure will lead them to finally accept a two-state solution, and there will be a larger participation of Pakistani police within the UN peacekeeping missions in the future.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello and welcome to a B-News English program Insight. Recently, Pakistan got elected as non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for a period of 3 years. This was Pakistan's success in United Nations, and this is an important position Pakistan will be holding, which will start from January 2025 for a period of 2 years. And there have been hectic diplomatic efforts which were carried out by Pakistan's permanent representative to United Nations, Ambassador Munir Akram, and his team, which led to this success. We warmly welcome Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, who has joined us from New York through special arrangement. Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, very warm welcome to Program Insight.
Thank you so much, Matin Saab. Very glad to be with you.
Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, this is very important role, as I was just mentioning, and very important position. Whatever happened, we will be definitely discussing something related to agenda. What will be Pakistan's agenda in multilateral diplomacy for next 2 years? What Pakistan will be doing in as far as multilateral diplomacy agenda for next 2 years are concerned? Ambassador Munir.
Thank you, Sisa. Of course, on the Security Council, as in other bodies, Pakistan's priorities will, of course, be to promote its own national objectives while contributing to the promotion of international peace and security. Our objectives, as you know, Kashmir is on the top of the agenda. The issue of self-determination for Kashmir. There are also great important issues that we have on the issue of peacekeeping, on the issue of counter-terrorism, with regard to Afghanistan. These are all important issues for Pakistan, and hopefully we will be able to promote our national objectives and aspirations as far as these national objectives are concerned. But of course, besides that, Pakistan has always contributed to efforts to promote international peace and security in accordance with the principles of the UN Charter. We are facing a world which is rife with conflict in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Africa, in so many other parts of the world. There are geopolitical tensions between the major powers. So these are all issues which Pakistan will contribute to addressing, to trying to promote a more peaceful world and to prevent and resolve conflicts that are raging across the world. This would be our aspiration for a positive and constructive role in international diplomacy as we sit on the Security Council.
Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, this is indeed a very ambitious agenda, and Pakistan in the past had played role, and as you said, would be looking forward to play a role in countering terrorism in the region, promoting peace, as you mentioned, Afghanistan, Jammu and Kashmir dispute, and worldwide, wherever there are issues, disputes, Pakistan had played a role. But to implement this agenda, there are enormous challenges. How would you like to overcome the challenges, particularly from Pakistan's eastern neighbors? And the eastern neighbors is always active to put Pakistan in hot waters, carry out proxies, carry out many other things to destabilize Pakistan. And same is situation in Afghanistan, where every day Pakistani security forces are facing huge terrorist attacks. So the challenge is to pursue the goals of peace and security. Please.
Well, of course, these are challenges for our entire diplomacy, not only in the Security Council, but on a day-to-day basis, which we are addressing. The threat from an eastern neighbor is ever present, and Pakistan has to maintain a credible deterrence capability to ensure that we do not suffer from any such threat from our eastern neighbor. At the same time, of course, Pakistan's effort has always been to try to promote peaceful solutions to the issues that we have with all our neighbors, including and especially with India. And our efforts will continue. Our effort is to seek a peaceful resolution of the Kashmir conflict. We hope that in the Council and elsewhere, through our diplomacy, we will be able to bring up greater normalcy to our relationship with India at the least, and to try to resolve our conflicts as such. Similarly, on the Afghanistan issue, our diplomacy has been to try and convince the interim government in Kabul that they must take action against terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, especially TTP terrorism, as well as some Baluch insurgencies. And that effort will continue. And our presence in the Council, I think, will enable us to escalate and to intensify that effort that we are making vis-a-vis Afghanistan and in the entire Afghan diplomacy. And similarly, we will contribute to enhancing counterterrorism and at the same time also building UN capacity for peacekeeping, where Pakistan plays a large role. And UN peacekeeping is now at a critical juncture. We need to find ways to strengthen UN peacekeeping, and Pakistan will try to contribute to that effort as well. So it's an ambitious agenda, no question about it. It's a national agenda. It's not only our presence on the Security Council, it's an all-round Pakistani diplomacy agenda. We have the support of the government, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Ministry, other agencies and arms of the Pakistani government. So hopefully in a whole of country, whole of government approach, we will be able to advance our objectives.
Ambassador Munir Akram Sir, one of the most important things that you have been highlighting in your several speeches, statements before the United Nations General Assembly and in other several UN agencies, that is United Nations Security Council reforms. So what do you mean by that? And by that, when we talk of the reforms, how would you like to address the challenge of inequality in global decision-making? That could be crisis management, that could be conflict resolution, that could be maintaining peace and security. So your thoughts on UN Security Council reforms. Now Pakistan will be sitting next year in the UN Security Council. Ambassador.
The UN Security Council reform efforts are being conducted in a special body, which is called the IGN, which is the intergovernmental negotiation that are taking place. This is a body of the General Assembly, and of course, this effort in the IGN will continue. The issue of Security Council reform is twofold. Firstly, we need better representation. There are 193 countries members of the UN, and only 10 of them, only 10 are represented as non-permanent members. We want to expand the membership of the non-permanent members, and we want to try to see how to reduce the ability of the permanent five to block actions in the Security Council. So on the one hand, increase representation of smaller, medium-sized countries as non-permanent members, and on the other side, try to see how to constrain the powers that have prevented action by the Security Council, for example, on the Middle East issue that we are seeing before our eyes. We are opposed to creating new permanent members. It is the permanent membership and the veto right which is the reason for paralysis in the Security Council. And we do not think that the problem is the solution, which is to create more permanent members, as is being suggested by the group of 4 countries, Japan, Germany, Brazil, and India. We do not think that creation of new permanent members will solve the problem. It will exacerbate the problems of the Security Council. So that's why we are pleading for only expansion in the non-permanent membership. And because if there are a greater number of non-permanent members, most of them will be developing countries, and they will be able, because of their voting rights, to be able to dominate the deliberations of the Security Council. And that is our aim of how to make the Security Council more democratic, more accountable, more transparent, and more responsible as a body of the United Nations.
Ambassador Munir, Pakistan is a leading voice for developing world, and Pakistan has been playing a role to highlight the issues of developing world and the gap between the developed world and the developing world. So keeping in view the fact that Pakistan itself is facing enormous economic challenges, economic crisis, security issues, so do you think, keeping in view of our own issues, Pakistan would continue to be a leading voice for the developing world in the UN?
We have always been a leading voice for developing countries right from the start, from the early days of the United Nations, and Pakistan's record speaks for itself. We will continue that role in the General Assembly, in the Economic and Social Council, and in other bodies. We will continue that role. I'm sure we will continue that role. Our effort is precisely to get decisions that will help solve the kind of problems that we are facing at the moment. What we are facing critically at the moment is, one, a liquidity problem. And the liquidity problem can be solved. There are solutions to the liquidity problems of developing countries. Creation of SDRs, for example, recapitalization of the multilateral development banks. All of this can generate larger amounts of concessional assistance to developing countries which need it. There are structural issues. Of course, we have to resolve those structural issues, our own issues, tax, etc. But the international system is structured to disadvantage developing countries, and we need to change that. And we have proposed actions, both to create additional liquidity to help developing countries which are in debt distress, which have financial difficulties, like Pakistan. There are over 100 countries which are in similar situations. And secondly, we have proposed a reform to the international financial architecture. We have the strong support of the Secretary General of the UN for this objective. We are working with him, and we wish to see a greater equality of voice, of vote. within the international financial institutions such as the IMF, the World Bank, etc. We need a greater equality in power in these institutions in order to make them more democratic and more responsive to the needs of the developing countries.
Ambassador, that's right. Pakistan would continue to be the leading voice for the developing world. Coming to the war and crisis, despite UN General Assembly resolution, United Nations Security Council resolution, UN Human Rights Council, and finally, there have been several verdicts by the International Court of Justice to prevent Israel from bombardment of the besieged Gaza. But every day over last almost 1 week, there have been hundreds of casualties. How you see this strategy, keeping in view the world order and the world system? The United Nations has been unable to prevent Israeli bombardment and genocide. Same was the case of ICJ. So how you see this complex situation? All orders, verdicts, documents, resolutions are there, and Israeli bombardment is continuing. Ambassador.
Well, this is again endemic problem in the international system, which is that there are certain countries against which enforcement action is difficult because they are protected in the Security Council by certain veto-wielding countries. And as long as they have that protection, enforcement action under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, through which UN resolutions can be implemented by force, that power is not available. And therefore, some of these countries, and Israel is, of course, the poster child of such countries which enjoy impunity. And this impunity allows them to conduct the kind of military and other occupation that is so blatantly, contrary to international law, to international justice. And it is therefore this sense of impunity of certain countries. I would say Israel is one of them. India was acting like one of them with its blatant occupation of Jammu and Kashmir. This sense of impunity has to be removed, and it can be removed by constraining the power of the veto-wielding members in the Security Council on the one hand, mobilizing the rest of the world, the developing countries, the smaller states on the other hand, and instituting measures through the legal system, judicial mechanisms to hold such countries accountable for the violations that they commit of international law. So that is the best we can do towards creating a more just and effective international enforcement regime. It is a long haul. We're not there yet, but this is the effort that we have to continue to make the international system more effective. In the case of Israel and the Gaza war, we have been working, obviously, the Muslim and the Arab countries have been working with their hands tied behind their back because Israel has protection. And they have an extremist regime which is not responsive to international opinion. But the pressure has built up. And even its closest supporters are now aligning themselves with the call for a ceasefire, for the call for humanitarian assistance, for the reconstruction of Gaza, and for a solution based on a two-state formula, which is internationally accepted. So the pressure has been mounting on Israel, and you see the cracks within the Israeli government, and we are hopeful that this pressure will lead them to finally accept a two-state solution, and so that we can restore a durable peace in the Holy Land.
Ambassador Munir Akram Sahab, you have been closely watching the efforts for truce, and the United States was pushing and pressurizing, as you said, Israel is under pressure, but US was pressurizing Israel to accept truce proposals. Would you like to update our viewers where these truce efforts have reached and how much time it may take more? Or what are the signals from Israeli side to accept these peace and ceasefire proposals?
Right. So, as I see it, negotiations are taking place at two levels. One is the indirect talks that are being held between Israel and Hamas through the intermediation of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States.
True.
These are the talks through which the latest peace plan has been evolved and has been put forward by the United States in a draft resolution before the Security Council. The draft resolution is under consideration. There are, of course, some friends, the Arab countries and Russia and China, who feel that this draft resolution should be stronger in calling for a ceasefire. It should be clearer that that ceasefire will be durable and that the Palestinians in Gaza will be able to return to their homes, that humanitarian assistance will be unimpeded, and that the hostage release will take place in a peaceful way rather than in the way that we saw 2 days ago, where a few hostages were released with 300 plus Palestinian casualties having taken place at the same time. That action has set back diplomatic efforts, but we are hopeful that these can be recovered and that the Security Council will eventually be able to reach a consensus on a draft resolution which sets out an effective and credible peace plan for Gaza and for the Middle East.
Ambassador Akram Saab just enlightened that International Court of Justice, all verdicts have been in the air, not implemented by Israel. Uh, and in fact, these decisions and the verdicts are binding on the member state because ICJ is a UN court. So what do you think? What further action International Court of Justice can take to ensure that its verdicts and decisions are implemented? Any move, any severe action could be initiated against Israel for non-compliance?
Well, as you know, the ICJ has so far issued provisional measures. It's still not decided on the main question which South Africa has put before it, which is to declare that Israel's actions in Gaza amount to genocide. So final decision is still awaited on that. But the provisional measures are also binding on all the parties, and they are binding on Israel, they're binding on Hamas, they are binding on the Palestinians. But so are the Security Council resolutions. The resolutions which have been passed, they are also binding on all parties. So therefore, the issue is one of enforcement, how to enforce binding decisions. This is the same case as in Kashmir. The resolutions on Kashmir, contrary to all these kind of opinions that have sometimes been floated about Chapter 6 and Chapter 7, all Security Council decisions have to be implemented by member states under Article 25 of the UN Charter. So all decisions, the issue is how to enforce. And enforcement action, as you know, also requires consensus in the Security Council. It requires the positive vote of the 5 permanent members, and that positive votes of the 5 are not available for enforcement action. And that is the key. We have to find either voluntary enforcement by the parties concerned or involuntary enforcement through Chapter 7 measures of the Security Council. These are the two options.
Ambassador Akram Saab, there is an important development in the region, and that is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, third time consecutively, has become the Prime Minister of India. On Sunday, his swearing in took place. Today, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif sent him a greeting message. And when new government in Pakistan again assumed its responsibilities, there was a greeting message from Narendra Modi in March. So, what do you think? In the third term, do we expect some positive signals from New Delhi vis-a-vis resumption of dialogue between Pakistan and India?
Uh, First of all, Mr. Sab, the exchange of these congratulatory messages are normal protocol and normal courtesies between two countries. Whenever a prime minister or president is elected, there are normal congratulatory messages. So we must, I feel, not read too much into the exchange of messages, although, and this is a good sign, that there are these at least normal civility between the two countries is being maintained. And hopefully, this normal civility could lead to some steps being taken which would address the many issues that have between us. And these are complex and multifarious issues. The core issue, of course, being Kashmir. But hopefully, civility will lead to some form of exchanges, some form of understanding that could decrease tensions between the two countries and set us on a path towards greater normalcy in our relationship.
Last question to you. Would you like to tell us something about upcoming UN General Assembly session that will be taking place in September this year? And on the sideline, there is also UN Futuristic Summit that will also be taking place. So, what are the preparations and what role Pakistan will be playing?
Well, there will be what is called, what the Secretary General has called it, the Summit of the Future, which means that they are trying to evolve an agreement on what are the steps that the world community can take to ensure durable peace, progress, and human rights for the future. And various proposals have been made. There is negotiations are underway on what is called the Pact of the Future. There are 47 recommendations for actions under this pact. However, the international climate, as you know, is highly tense because of geopolitical tensions between the major powers. There are deep divisions on many of the issues that are on the table, from peace and security to development to human rights, and it is still, uncertain whether we will be able to reach a consensus on the document, because that document has to be adopted by consensus. That is what the General Assembly has decided. So we are working on that. Pakistan is a member of the group of 77 in China. We are working actively within that group to promote the interests of developing countries. We are also chairing a separate, smaller group of developing and other countries. It is called the Like-Minded Group. It is about 20 countries, which Pakistan is leading, in order to ensure that the core principles of the UN Charter, the core requirements of justice in international relations are preserved. And our focus has been on the peace and security issues, on the international governance issues. So this is a group of 20 countries, which includes China and Russia, Nigeria, and other important countries from the Arab world and the Muslim world. And we are hopeful that we will be able to preserve the intergovernmental nature of the United Nations, the sanctity of the UN principles and purposes, and not allow the United Nations to erode those principles in the future. So the task is on. It is still very intense negotiations are underway on this Pact of the Future.
Ambassador Akram Saab, a brief question. Recently, Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi met UN Secretary General accompanied by you, and there was a discussion on Pakistan's role in the UN peacekeepers. And there was also some breakthrough as far as Pakistan police officials now will be joining duties in the UN peacekeeping mission, which was this process was a real step. So, what is this breakthrough? Please enlighten us. How was that meeting? And Pakistani police officials would, in future, will be joining UN peacekeeping missions.
Well, it was a good meeting. The interim minister briefed the Secretary General on the quality, competence of Pakistani police, in particular with regard to counterterrorism, our experience in dealing with counterterrorism, which we are doing on a daily basis, which enhances the quality and experience of our police as UN peacekeepers. The UN is also turning a lot within its peacekeeping missions to police components, because a lot of peacekeeping now is actually policing issues. Pakistan is fortunate in that the UN Police Commissioner is a Pakistani, and we are hopeful that there will be a larger participation of Pakistani police within the UN peacekeeping missions in the future. The minister was able to brief the Secretary General. The Secretary General was very responsive to the quality of Pakistani peacekeepers, both military and civilian. And hopefully there will be a larger presence of Pakistani police as well as Pakistani military in UN peacekeeping in the future.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you so much indeed, Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, for speaking exclusively to Program Insight in videos. And with this, goodbye from VNews Studios till our next program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.